And then when I got out of the military, so, and we can talk a little bit about all the exiting and all that kind of stuff, because that's part of probably the story that put me in a place like this today. Twice appointed by Barack Obama to two really critical jobs, the Defense Intelligence Agency that you mentioned, and I was also Assistant Director of National Intelligence for engagement around the world and here at home. So I had a domestic role as a Assistant Director of National Intelligence. Both those positions, 3-star positions, appointed by Barack Obama, fully confirmed by the Senate. Mm-hmm. So that started in 2011, 2012, all the way to 2014 when I left. And an interesting thing, and I think I said this before in another show, but this is sort of probably breaking this here, because I never met Barack Obama.
Really?
I never met him. So he appointed me twice. He had to approve it. And then, of course, he made me, the enemy of the state in the very famous conversation between he and Trump turning the country over. Turning businesses over. You take a business over. I mean, in business, it might be a little different.
I have a question on that exact situation.
Jump in anytime.
Well, just since you brought it up, I watched 2 different documentaries on you last night. I didn't sleep last night because I wanted to be prepared for this. It was very intriguing what Obama told Trump in that transition meeting.
Yeah.
Here's the quote from, this was actually The Peaceful Transition of Power, the documentary, The Plot Against the President.
General Flynn, can you move your phone? I think it's picking up static right next to the mic. Go for it.
So, according to the documentary, you tell me if this is true or false. Obama told Trump the following: "Don't let anyone tell you who to hire in your administration. Surround yourself with your own people. There's only one person you should not hire, General Michael Flynn." Obama said that there's 2 people in the world you cannot trust. One of them is Putin. The other one is General Michael Flynn.
It's like a badge of honor coming from him.
Sebastian Gorka has been here.
Every time I hear that, I'm like,
right.
Think about that. Okay, think about that for a moment.
Sure.
So what I just said about Barack Obama, and I'm still at that moment in time, I'm still holding one of the highest security clearances that the country can have. I had just gone through another security clearance update, like within the past 6 months, I think. So, and they gave it to me, right? I mean, this is all the vetting that you go through, and this is all before. So he has that conversation with Trump, all before all of the Russia nonsense. So Russia Gate is ongoing. We don't know about it yet. Right, but before I get coiled up with, a very legitimate phone call with the Russian ambassador. So that conversation between Barack Obama and the outgoing president of the United States, the incoming president of the United States, to transition the entirety of the United States of America, they focus on 2 people, Mike Flynn and the dictator from North Korea, Kim Jong-un. And it's just mind-blowing when you think about it. Instead of saying, look, here's the issues that we were dealing with around the world, foreign policy, domestic policy, economics, all these kinds of issues that you have to deal with, right? He focuses Trump's attention on 2 people.
Interesting.
And, so go ahead. I'm sorry to cut you off. I'll do that often.
You're the general here. Cut me off at any time. Put yourself in 2-term President Barack Obama's shoes. Mm-hmm. He obviously wanted Hillary to win the election, clearly. Yeah. Trump wins. We all remember that awkward sit down. It just felt weird, the 2 of them in the same room. But put yourself in Barack Obama's shoes. He could say anything to Trump, anything. Right. But he talks about you, specifically, that you were one of the 2 most dangerous men in the world. Yeah. Put yourself in Barack Obama's shoes. Why does he target you?
Yeah, because I am not an individual who came out of the military at the level that I came out at, and also while I was in the military, I was very blunt, because that's my sort of thing. I guess it's if you say, well, what do you get from Flynn? You're going to get what he believes, like it or not. That's sort of number one from the military perspective. But I'm not a person who came out at my level and went to work with with the big companies, with the big defense industry, and sort of got bought up and caught up.
Bought and paid for you.
Well, caught up in that lifestyle, right?
Yes, sir.
Living around Washington, D.C., you get a job with, the big defense industry, the big military industrial complex, right? Security state complex. And the next thing, and I also am a Democrat. Okay, I was a Democrat.
You?
I've changed. I've just recently, in the last 2 years,
his mom was in politics years ago. She was a Democrat. She would take you with you to the rallies.
Oh yeah, I've that's a great story.
Did you vote for Barack Obama?
No, I never voted for president the entire time I was in the military. Nope.
So how do you?
Because I always looked at it as a commander in chief,
but you still identified as a Democrat, even though
I was a lifelong sort of a Kennedy Democrat. Rhode Island is where we grew up, and that part of the country, and. Because you mentioned my mom. My mom was she was big in politics. She ran for office in the state. My mom's platform was right to life, though. So early on, here's a Democrat, and now the Democrats they're really not. There's no such thing as a Democrat anymore. So really, don't tell anybody. But the Democrat Party,
nobody's listening.
Dead.
General Flynn. Okay.
So we grew up as Democrats, and I actually. When I was being asked for advice by all these different candidates for president, they were all Republican candidates, and then of course Trump, and so even when I went in as the national security advisor, if you looked at my political registration, I was registered as a Democrat, and then if you look at June of 2016. Trump narrowed it down to 4 people to be his vice president. Okay, me, Christie, Newt Gingrich, and Mike Pence. In June, there's a June actually right after the 4th of July. There's a couple of famous pictures that were put out on the media. These are the candidates, and so anyway, so that's what's kind of odd about this whole thing. Why? Because back to your question about why, and it was because I'm not somebody. What motivates me is my family, my faith, and this country. And I was taught that, when you learn, like we were talking outside here to some of your great team here, I always say between the age of the time you're born until about the age of 10 is when you're going to really learn your values and the type of person that you are. And so I learned that this country is a great country. My parents worked hard. My father served in the military, blah blah blah. And I know based on my own training, my own experiences, having traveled around the world, and served in combat and served in other places, that there are enemies that will always try to go after us. And this country has to be. I say, when people use the phrase "freedom isn't free," I use the phrase "freedom must be guarded." Okay, freedom must be guarded. So if the path to freedom, the path to have what you want to have, is filled with hardship. It's sacrifice, right? You talk about economic freedom all the time. You talk about wealth, creation all the time. You don't just go sprinkle fairy dust and poof, you're a 3-star general, right? Or you're a great entrepreneur, or you're a great businessman. You got to work your ass off for it. But there's also another path. See, there's another path that you take, and that's the path like a guy like Barack Obama took, okay, and others. Hillary Clinton is another one, and there are others. There are others that we should talk about, maybe some of them today, because I know you just did a thing about the World Economic Forum. So there's a path that some people take. It's a very easy path, and they take, right? They're takers. They're I don't know what we can say. We have in the Army, we say shitters and eaters, right? So. There's takers out there, and they take. And what they get is they get more power, they get more wealth, but they actually haven't done anything. So they might serve in government, they serve in a political position, and you say to yourself, what are you doing? You're actually destroying more than you're creating, right? And so, anyway, you got me on a soapbox there. But that's a very important. So you're back to the question about Barack Obama. So you look at a guy like Barack Obama and you say, how could this guy get to where he's at? And I said the other day, and I say this a lot about Barack Obama, and I tag him sometimes on my Twitter account. I tag him because I ask him questions because he never answers, But maybe one of these days he will. But Barack Obama had a unique opportunity coming in as the president in 2008. And that unique opportunity was to really unify and actually go into the black community. Right? And really strengthen, like, he presents himself as this great family man. Wonderful. That's wonderful. But get into the black community where the family's been destroyed and get into the streets and get into these communities and talk to these people about, particularly black men, about their families, right? Because the black women who are working in, whether they're working in beauty salons or hotels or wherever. I mean, there's a lot of low income in the black community, and that black community was destroyed. He knows it. It was destroyed really by the Democrat Party back, late 60s, early 70s. There was decisions made.
LBJ.
So you really got to understand this history. So Barack Obama had a unique opportunity, and he blew it. Because that was not what he was asked to do. Okay, I believe, and this is my own analysis of everything that we see now. You did a great piece the other day. And I put it out this morning on Twitter, at least, where you talked about the World Economic Forum. So, when we start a really good piece. It's it's only like 14 minutes or something, but it's a really good piece. And if it was on YouTube, I'm surprised they haven't, shut it off. But everything that I'm talking about, it's when you look at this country and you say, how do we get to here? How do we get to, what else you say, 250 years? It's struggle. It's absolute struggle. It's sacrifice. It's being willing to give your life up. All those kinds of issues, like I say, sacrifice and freedom, they come hand in hand. So, why did Barack Obama not do things to me that would be unifying? They were not unifying. And I believe, and you can argue with me about it, but I believe, and I definitely sense it, and I saw it. I think that the big plan, the big strategic plan was 8 years of Obama, 8 years of Hillary, and the Great Reset would be complete, and I wouldn't be here. But a guy by the name of Donald Trump, like him or not, he's got 72 felony counts against him for like 750 years or some ridiculous thing. I'd have been worried, and this is how arrogant they are, the sort of the enemy, right? The enemy, how arrogant they are. Had they indicted him for like 2 counts, maybe 1 count, right? Smith had just indicted him for 1 count, told these other courts, and actually had something, I'd be really worried. 1 or 2 counts. I'd be like, man, they got something on this guy. They actually have somebody who's got video, audio, tape, evidence, whatever. But when they put him, when it was like, 16 counts, 12 counts, whatever the numbers are at the different courts, and it ended up with like 70 and, over 70 felony counts, then you know that this thing is a sham. It's an absolute sham. And I think that they're going to fight tooth and nail to not let this thing, to not let go of it, to not lose control of it. And when I say it's sort of these globalist powers that are holding on to this thing right now.
I want to follow up on this because for me, when I think about an Obama and Trump, they couldn't be night and day of two opponents, right? Obama made fun of him, Trump made fun of him. Trump went after him for you weren't born here, birth certificate, all this stuff, and Obama said, at least I'm a president, you're not. And when I think about the 2 names he gave, I think about, is he trying to misdirect Trump, or if he's saying you, why is he saying you? But this whole thing with Trump and Obama, one, they can't stand each other, okay? And I don't believe they trust each other. And so I'm sitting there saying, you got how many names to give things to say bad things about? Okay, so he gives your name. Why is he giving your name? Story comes out afterwards. Well, the dealings, Russia, all this stuff, and then, report, investigation, all of that, things that happen. So we are sitting there as American people. We're like, did this guy do business? How long did he last as a national? Was it 24 days? What was the amount of days? 20?
Yeah.
Some number like that, and then so everyone said, well, look, Scaramucci lasted 7 or 11 days, Flynn lasted, 20 some days. And I've had Bernard Kerik before when he was under Bush, he lasted for a few days, it's like, So is it a targeting? Do they fear you? Is there something they're worried about? What is the real reason?
Yeah, so those other roles, the role of National Security Advisor is does not require Senate confirmation, because it's supposed to be a person that the president is able to bring in to be his advisor on national security for the country. And people think, national security is all about, foreign, it's all about wars overseas. National security is about education. It's about border security. It's about economic security. It's everything, right? So you have to have somebody with an array of experience to be able to sit into a position like that, or understand, if you bring somebody in, that they know how to work with other members of a team, right? Very, very important role. And so I always say that the coup against a duly elected president and against this country started on the 5th of January of 2017. It's a very famous Oval Office meeting, 5 January 2017. That actually came out in my case when we started to really break evidence, but it also came out in the Durham report and Durham's hearing in front of Congress, which was just recently, a few months back. So, and you asked the question, and I'll restate it a little bit, because it's not, Obama made it about himself. Trump, to a degree, at that moment, made it about himself. And it's not about either of those men. It's about this country, and it's about how this country continues to move forward. Now, I can tell you that Trump has learned a lot. He's learned a lot about not only, hey, I got elected president in 2016, a tough campaign, tough battle, everybody will get behind me now. No, okay? Because we have an element in this country, and, however detailed you want to get into it, I'll get into it with you, but we have an element in this country that is working their asses off to get control of this country in a different way. When people go, that Trump is a threat to democracy, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic, right? People vote for their elected leaders. So Obama, to do that in that time frame, it was an indicator. I work in the world of indicators and warnings, okay? That's been my life in the military. So it's an indicator to me, like, man, there's something going on. It's not right. But again, we're working very hard to transition the country to a new president, a duly elected president, by the way, and to go off in a direction that was clearly going to be different than what Barack Obama had set for 8 years, right? For 8 years. I mean, he doubled the debt. So he took $10 trillion of debt from Bush. In his time, in his 8 years, he doubled it. We had about 20 trillion plus debt going into the Trump administration. So that just begins to compound. It's nuts. And American people don't even understand it these days, because they say trillion. Shit, most people don't have a few bucks. So you begin to look at it and you go, okay, so what happened? Well, a guy got in the way. A guy got in the way of the direction that they wanted the United States of America to take, right? And this goes back to, and I've really studied this, and you probably, just listening to you the other day, this business about this World Economic Forum and this, that's the globalists, right? So now what I say is, we're now in a place where, and argue with me or your listeners out there, you're great listeners, you got a great audience. Your listeners, this is sort of a time where it's not like Democrats versus Republicans or the Warsaw Pact versus the West. This is now globalism versus Americanism. And Americanism is really, the tangible component of Americanism is America, is the United States of America. The piece of geography that we stand on here that still has 50 states, right? And so Americanism, so what does that mean? The folks in the mainstream media, and the mainstream media is not CNN, it's not MSNBC, that's cable news, it's the big corporate media, it's the ABC, CBS, NBC, that's mainstream media. So the mainstream media, with their cohorts in cable news. They want to say, if I say Americanism, they're going to go, well, he's a white Christian nationalist. I mean, I've been called every name in the book. Our moms tell us a lot of things. My mom used to say, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you. Get back out there. Get back outside and don't come whining to me, right? I mean, in the family that I grew up in. So you get back out and you dust yourself off and you stand back up. So Americanism is about being an American, believe in our Constitution, believe in our Bill of Rights, understand the damn thing. I carry one around with me. I show it like this, not like that. I show it like that because that's the Constitution, that's the Bill of Rights, and that's the Declaration of Independence, and it takes you like 45 minutes to read. You know how many people have read this? Hardly any.
1%, maybe.
Hardly any. I mean, people don't read it because it's like they just believe it. They just go, I love, America. So Americanism is a combination of things. It's a combination of really, our First Amendment, which is all about our ability to be able to say what we want to say, without hurting. I mean, we don't want to hurt people. I think that's, I know I probably have. In fact, I know I have. But it's also about your ability to practice your faith. I don't care if you're purple with pink polka dots and you pray to trees. I mean, if that's what your faith is, right? I mean, I served in the military, for example, I served in the military under Bill Clinton. Come out of Reagan, you come out of Bush, you go into Clinton. And one of the first acts of Bill Clinton was don't ask, don't tell. Now, I think you were out of the service by then, right? Or no, you hadn't gone into the service by then.
Yet.
You
didn't. In 97.
Yeah, you went in 97. You went in like 5 or 6 years later.
Tail end of the Clinton administration.
So 1993, Congressman Les Aspin becomes Secretary of Defense. Les Aspin, he comes in. Their first policy is don't ask, don't tell. Well, what does that mean? Most people don't know because most people don't serve in the military, right? But don't ask, don't tell had to do with gays and lesbians serving in the military. And as long as as long as they don't talk about it, we don't care if they serve. And we looked in the military. I don't care. I mean, serving in the particularly in the unit that you served in, you don't really. All you care about is they're ready and they're willing, and they don't give up on you. You don't fight because you don't fight for. I say you don't fight because you hate your enemies. You fight because you love your country, or you love your family, or you love the soldier on your left or your right. You love. We fight out of love. We don't fight out of hate. So, when I talk about that particular act, right, the don't ask, don't tell introduction into the Army, I mean, people look at me and they go, "Oh, geez, he's this." They try to box us in, okay? And today, I call that a narrative assassination. Okay, a narrative assassination. So that's what they did to Donald Trump. That's what they do to all of us. You're lucky so far, I think. You're lucky. Maybe you felt some of this, but the narrative assassination. If you look at and just got to read some of the books, you pay attention to what they did to people like John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Why haven't we released all that stuff? And Trump should have released it all. He should have been pounding the desk, release all this instead of, recently he said the other day, and I'm a big fan of Donald Trump. Don't take me wrong, but I mean, I'm one of these guys like, and this is why, back to your question about Obama, I'm not enamored by these people. We all, like I was taught as a kid, we put our pants on one leg at a time kind of thing, and I've met with kings, princes, generals, admirals, presidents. You look at them and it's like, I look at you and I say, what have you done lately kind of to do what I believe? And I have a very, very strong passion and a belief. But I try to check my emotions about this country because I know I've studied our country. I've studied world history. I know what sacrifice is. I've seen and known guys that I've known who have been killed because they signed on the dotted line. You signed on the dotted line. You didn't know why you signed. You needed to get out of your neighborhood or whatever, but you signed on the dotted line. Okay, I'm going to go 101st sounds cool. We're going to jump out of helicopters or planes or whatever. I'm going to go do this stuff. But what you really signed up to do was to give your life for this country. That's what you don't know when you're, you were probably 18 or 19.
18.
Yeah, 18 years old. Most kids don't know that. And to me, I'm not one for, universal service. But all these things that I'm talking about has to do with Americanism. Americanism is who we are in this mosaic, this fabric of this country. And the other part of this is also, back to your question. I was joking with Adam, calling him Owen, and there's a guy out there named Owen who will understand that. But so part of this for me, to your question about Obama, so you don't get to be the head of an intelligence agency, one of the largest in the world, okay, because you're an ass kisser. Maybe sometimes you get to some of those places, but not in that. For me, it wasn't that way. Or you don't get there because you're stupid, or you don't get there because you're committing treason. I mean, you're doing these. You get there because you've demonstrated a potential, and you've demonstrated a level of expertise that says you're the right guy to put in that job. So it's not just DIA, because people don't know. They know CIA, right? They don't know DIA. But it's not just DIA. It's the whole industrial, military, security, intelligence complex. And my life, certainly the second half of my career as a not only as a tactician but as a strategist and as a warrior, understanding war, and you mentioned I have all these master's degrees. One of them is in war. It's a master's in war. They call it military arts and sciences, but it's a master's in war. So where you study different things. So I understand our government very, very well. I understand the complexities of our government. I understand the agencies, activities, commissions, and departments that we have. Donald Trump visited Washington, D.C. maybe 8 times before he became the president. And most of it was probably to visit his beautiful hotel. He's got these beautiful, he had a beautiful hotel there now, and I understand now they got rid of it, and it's like falling apart.
Yeah, it's the old post office. It's an amazing hotel.
So you got a guy in Flynn who's going to come in, doesn't have to get confirmed by the Senate. So I go right to work. I'm the second guy he actually appoints that Trump appointed, and so I go to work right away. I'm going to work. I'm transitioning the government. I'm transitioning the entirety of the security state. These people knew what questions I was asking. Why? Because I was in the White House talking to Susan Rice multiple times prior to the 5th of January of 2017. I keep going back to that date because that's the date of the coup. Now, I won't get into the details unless you want to waste time doing it, but that's a very, very public meeting. There's a lot of information about that. A lot started to come out in my case where we started to break evidence that was being hidden from the American people. So
let's go to that.
Cut me off any time because you guys got me going.
I mean, listen, we want to also hear what your perspective, your POV is. That's a very good perspective to get. But so Twitter files happens, right? There were a lot of people, in a smaller scale, there were a lot of people at Twitter that were afraid about Musk buying Twitter. Why were they afraid? They trashed him. This new guy came in, took over before Musk, whoever the CEO was after Jack Dorsey. What was the guy's name? Singal. Rob, can you pull up the name of the CEO of Twitter before Musk took over after Jack Dorsey? So everybody was like, well, Jack Dorsey is this, Jack Dorsey is that, Jack Dorsey this. And then all of a sudden, the new guy comes in, and they're like, wait a minute, you guys were worried about Jack Dorsey. This is the guy you really want to be worried about. It's the CEO that came after Jack Dorsey. There you go. That's what it is. Agrawal or something like that. Yeah. So, oh, my God, you got to be careful with him. He started changing stuff. He can't do this. He's banning this guy. He's banning that guy. Yeah. Okay. And then he buys 10% of the company, and he gets on the board. We're going to make it work. And he buys the whole company, and then Twitter files comes out. And then we're seeing emails. We're like, whoa. So you guys asked about this. Yesterday we had 2 guys here who are straight, Krasenstein brothers, and they were on the podcast, and we're having a great conversation with them. During the podcast, we talk about, how the Twitter files show that there was an email from the government to them telling them, hey, don't release the New York Post article because there's not enough credibility behind it. And if you do, if the world finds
you're describing elements of sedition and treason in collusion between the elements of the United States government, okay, key departments, key agencies between the United States government,
which is insane, by the way,
and a private tech company that has an ability to control a lot of voices, to control basically to to curtail speech in a lot of people. I mean, you mentioned the Twitter files. There was a list, a targeting list, right? Trump was number one, and I was knocked off on I think the 7th or 8th of January of 2017. I was number 8 on that list, and I hadn't tweeted. I mean, I think after I had received my pardon, I think I finally tweeted. I started tweeting again, and I had maybe I don't even remember, maybe 100 maybe from the time I had come on until that point. And so,
but here's where I'm going with this. This is the point I want to make to you, because I'm trying to connect the dots. Either you're a bad person or you're somebody not to be trusted based on what Obama was saying to Trump. Yeah. Either that's what it is, or the element of what happened with Twitter files was about to happen because you had access to information if you were to go to get in as a 3-star general, where you'd know where to look, that if you were able to expose what they were doing, it could be Obamagate, it could be a lot of different things. This could be Watergate 2.0. This could be a lot of that. So, hey, if there's the one guy that can make the connection of Obamagate, it's him. We definitely don't want him there. But it has to be one of the two, because if not one of the two, you mean to tell me out of 7.7 billion people in the world to fear you're one of them, a 3-star that gave 33 years to? Why would we fear you? Why would he have to be worried about you? It prompts so many of my paranoid, skeptical side to say, you must have something on them, or you did something wrong. But it can only be one of those two things.
Yeah. It's not so much having something on him. And in this case, I'm assuming you're talking about Obama. It's understanding, like there's a phrase, that people have characterized me knowing where the bodies are buried, right? So again, I said that I was doing transition meetings with Susan Rice. Okay, now they'll watch this, so maybe YouTube won't cut you off here, but they'll watch this because they'll understand. They'll want to know what's going on. What am I thinking? What is happening? So these transition briefings, which are big deals, there's all kinds of programs that go on in the government. One of the things that the National Security Advisor also has and gets are things like these FISA, right? These FISA applications, right? So damn near everything, other than what the President of the United States decides he's not going, in this case, he is not going to tell me about, right? Everything goes past the National Security Advisor, everything. So everything previously, okay, because from the previous administrations to the current administration, everything. So if the National Security Advisor says, okay, I want to see every single presidential finding from the very first finding. Okay, now people can go look up presidential findings, okay? And you say, okay, what's a presidential finding? Presidential finding are things that for the most part, a finding is something that is so sensitive, so necessary to protect the sanctity of the United States of America that the president has to sign off on it. He's got to, he has to sign something, and presidential findings are many, and they're very, they're classified. They're very sensitive. So I won't go beyond just describing what a presidential finding is, because they've been written about, and there's plenty of information about them. So when you talk about presidential findings, so I asked about them, right? And then you start to ask about, because if you go back and look at one of the things that I did at the Defense Intelligence Agency, I initially went in and I started to do an audit, because I wanted to, you take over a business, hell, your IRS is going to audit you every year, right? If you take over a business, you take over a unit, you kind of look at the different things that are happening, and so when I took over DIA, I did an audit. I did an audit of the it's a $1 billion corporation, essentially, a multi-billion dollar corporation with almost 20,000 people. So I wanted to do an audit because I knew the people. I knew a lot of the people. So fast forward to this other part of this conversation is that, so now I'm asking questions about things that the National Security Advisor must know. And they knew it. And so there are different organizations, and there's principally one organization is coming in to talk to you about these things. And at the time, I can tell you, because I knew about them, because as the DIA director, you are privy to the presidential daily briefing. You get that read to you every day. I mean, I operated at a very strategic level, so I knew the inner workings of the military-industrial security state complex. Okay, when I say security state, that's the intelligence community, all of them, right? So I operated at that level, and I had always been like a good reconnaissance soldier, right? I was always probing because I wanted to know if I'm going to be in charge of something. I needed to know everything that I needed to know to be able to be successful, to support my bosses, right? And in this case, the President of the United States. So there was a lot of things that I was asking about, and now all of a sudden we go into the final phase, of the transition, which is really January, and that's why I say this January 5th meeting in the Oval Office was a very important meeting for Obama. Obama led it. Joe Biden was in on it. Clapper was in on it. Sally Yates, Jim Comey, John Brennan, Susan Rice, and that meeting was really a meeting to, this is the get Flynn to get Trump, okay, which is a very famous statement. Okay, it'd been all over the internet, right? Get Flynn to get Trump. In fact, and you get ready to bleep, okay, because it's first we F Flynn and then we F Trump, okay? So these are real things. These are real people.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.